There we go. All right. Welcome, Mike Tanier. Thanks for joining us. Did I spell or pronounce your name right, by the way?
Absolutely, you did.
Okay. Thanks for joining us with Hogs Haven with this interview. And we're going to be talking about the Football Outsiders Almanac 2021, as well as just your analysis. So first, I wanted to ask, how did you first get involved with Football Outsiders? What do you do there? And how did you contribute to the 2021 Almanac?
Well, just as we were talking about backstage, I have been with Football Outsiders since 2004. If you find a 2004 Almanac in a remainder bin somewhere and want to read things about Drew Bledsoe, I'm in there. But I was recently promoted. So it was 17 years of job interview. This is a tough company to get.
Right, absolutely.
And of course, I was part-time while writing for Bleacher Report and other outlets in the New York Times, et cetera. I am now senior analyst here at Football Outsiders. We're expanding, we're growing, we're adding more fantasy services, we're adding Twitch streams and podcasts and all. So I'm now here full time. Wrote 4 chapters for this year's Almanac, but I think that brings my grand total over the years up to about 775 chapters of the Almanac over the last decade and plus.
But you wrote the chapters for the Giants and the Cowboys, right?
Yes, I did. And also the Bengals and the Ravens. But for Washington fans, Giants and Cowboys.
Yeah.
Really positive one and a not so positive.
Right. We'll let the watchers or the viewers guess which one is which. So a lot of people mistakenly believe that football analysts just look at numbers in a dark room somewhere, but the Almanac points out that your analysts actually spend a lot of time watching game tape. I just wanted to ask, how much tape do you study, and how does that inform the analysis that's given in the Almanac and on the Football Outsiders website?
You know, it's funny. I don't know where they think the numbers are coming from if we're not watching the games. It just downloads stat sheets and things like that. Obviously, we're watching. And there's a couple of things. Clearly, when you look at the statistics, we have things like blown blocks and drop passes and a cornerback's rate in coverage, how many completions. Well, you have to watch the games to get that. Now, me personally, I'm not watching them with a check mark. I'm not doing that. But we have agreements with Sports Info Solutions and others. I'll tell you right now, during the course of the season, I probably watch about 90% of the games. Give or take a Texans-Bengals game in week 16, I can live without that. And then while writing, so if I were writing, for example, when I was writing the Giants chapter, I think I watched a total of 5 or 6 Giants games intensely, not just like, oh, look at that, Danny Jones, really making sure I'm looking at the offensive line, the linebackers, things like that. And part of that is to corroborate the statistics that we have and to say, well, why is this? Okay, and part of that is, for some of these teams, it's like, well, that 7-sack game, who were these offensive linemen? Who was the guy, when it said this guy blew 3 blocks in this game when he was blocking Chase Young? I want to watch them myself. I want to have a feel for that and see when he was doing it right and see him in other situations. So lots and lots of things. Everybody who does scouting, folks, is doing analytics as well, because the scouts would go to the coach or general manager and say, you know what, that guy blew blocks 23% of the time. He did math. He divided. He did a percent. And everyone who's doing analytics is doing some level of scouting to kind of inform it, even if it's just to get the data that we're then going to crunch.
Right. That makes total sense. So DVOA is one of the most important stats developed by Football Outsiders. What is the correct way to use DVOA, and what are some ways that you see it misunderstood or misapplied?
It makes a very good simple power rating. It's good at spotting undervalued or overvalued teams. Usually overvalued teams. DVOA will scream its head off percentage-wise at us at a 5-1 team with a bunch of close wins, bad opponents, where it was like, oh, they kicked 5 56-yard field goals and that's how they won. That'll spot it. At the same time, it's not just a power ranking. The best way to use it is we have offense ranking, defense ranking, run defense ranking, pass offense, pass rush defense, special teams. When you get our premium packages at FO Plus, you can get by receivers, by types of passes, things like that. So it doesn't just say, oh, this team's 10th best. This can tell you one-stop shopping. They're 5th best run defense, but 18th best run defense, and 38 for the Washington, 31st pass offense, et cetera. And you can get those breakdowns and you can use them to make more informed wagering decisions. You're a fantasy person, say, tell me about this defense for real. You get that kind of information, or you just want to know the teams better. That's the best way to use it. Misunderstandings, I don't know. The main misunderstanding we get is when that 5-1 team and we go to DVOA and they're ranked 14th, when everybody who just does power rankings off the top of their head has the 5-1 team third, that's when the hate mail comes in.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's easy to look at 5-1 and say, okay, we'll put them right underneath the Packers. It's harder to do the analysis and say, well, this is moving forward, and this is something that's more real, and that's what we're trying to do at Football Outsiders.
Out of curiosity, did it spot the Steelers as maybe being overrated last year when they were 11-0?
Yes, yeah, that was a good example of it. Now, in fairness, a lot of people were looking at that team like you didn't need analytics to be like, oh, that was a really ugly, yucky win, and Roethlisberger's passes are going like this and all. But like it was there, it was sitting there. It's like, this is a team that's primed for a decline. And over the years, we've been more likely to spot the overrated team with it.
Right.
And it's like, and we're signing on the warning klaxons, and people are sending us hate mail. But like, I hope like maybe a smart wagerer is taking unders or taking the other action or whatever. And it's very often correct. It's harder to spot that team down there because if the team's doing well, statistically for a couple games in a row, they're going to get some wins. It's harder to get like a fluke loss than to get a fluke win.
Right. And what are the most predictive stats for which team in a given game is going to win?
But I mean, during the course of the season, great teams pass well and stop the pass. Now, that's the opposite of what the coach says on the first day. You win by running and stopping the run, and then you look at raw stats and you get a confirmation bias on that because, well, look at the Chiefs, look at their running game. It's like, yeah, every casual fan knows, it was the fourth quarter. They ran the ball 17 times and the opponent was throwing. And that's why they look like they have a great run defense and a great run offense. And we all watched the game. They threw 1 million yards in the first quarter and then they took the foot off the gas or whatever. So generally speaking, you can see by that passing information who the strong teams are moving forward. Now, there's other elements. There's more nuance to that. There's another thing that we look at a lot. You have to be super careful with takeaways. Of course, at the end of a game, you can look and say, well, this team fumbled 4 times. This team didn't turn the ball over. You kind of know who won. That works. You have to watch it when you're trying to predict the next game forward because some takeaways are very predictive. Like if you're getting a lot of interceptions because the quarterback is on his back because Chase Young and Montez Sweat are on top of him, that carries from week to week. If you're just recovering a bunch of fumbles and then you watch it and it's like, well, there were 10 fumbles so far this year and we recovered all 10 of them. That's not because your defenders are great at pouncing on balls. That's because you got lucky. It bounced into some bellies, etc. So you have to watch things like takeaways. Sometimes it's super predictive and sometimes it is actually the thing that's lying to you. And it's the reason the Steelers started 11-0.
Right. And actually, can you tilt your camera up just a little bit? Yep. A little down. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. You're going to my nose, So
yeah, no problem. And so, what are the most predictive stats for a team's win-loss record in the upcoming season, and how do you calculate projected wins for a team in the Almanac?
Well, the projected wins come from 10,000 simulations. Right, so we put in a lot of data, and there's tons of variables. We run 10,000 simulations, and you get this spread. So you have the number for Washington. Look over it.
8.1, yeah.
8.1, but that's part of a spread because there are a bunch of 10-7 seasons, a bunch of 9-8 seasons. There are some 13-4 seasons. I'm trying to convert in my head, and there might be a few 4-13 seasons in there. So you get this wide spread. From a predictive standpoint, and it's bad news for Washington, is that offense is usually much more predictive than defense. There are things that are very strong indicators of moving up and moving down. For example, a team that is much better.
And you mean offense last season, right?
Yeah. So you want to be able to say last season's offense probably going to carry over. Defenses fluctuate up and down. Defense is still more subjective to the quarterbacks you faced and things like that. A quarterback, and not Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback who is showing up and happy to be there. You can count on their performance. It's going to go on gentle curves. They're going to go up a little, down a little. Defenses don't do that. And that's bad news for Washington. And there are other indicators. A team that was lights out on third down, but bad on first and second down. Chances are that they're the team they were on first and second down, and on third down, somebody tripped and you got yards, or they have a great scrambler who made a couple miracle plays. So you can find undervalued and overvalued teams like that. And this is stuff that has been, now it's like we have like 30 years of back data. It's been tested, retested. So variables like that, in addition to variables about free agent additions, all get put in the soup, 10,000 simulations, and then we get our results from that.
Right, right. And the Almanac includes a pregame section with lessons learned over the years from Football Outsiders analysis. What are one or two of the most important lessons learned that you think football fans should take away from that section?
Well, one of them is, and it's permeated the entire league, it's like the value of the running back. And the value of a running back, like when we started writing that thing in 2004, it's like, what do you mean running backs are not that valuable? I just watched LaDainian Tomlinson do X, Y, Z. But it's become common knowledge, I think, around the NFL, still debated by, Ezekiel Elliott's agent and like some father-in-laws on Facebook. But like, it's not that running backs don't matter. It's that if you're trying to build around the running back, you've got 1 or 2 years that they're going to be spectacular. And then you're going to probably have injuries and fall off. They should not be paid a great deal of money. You're better off having a 2, 3, 4 person committee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the big one that has permeated like conversation. And the other one is one I just described. One of the first things I'll look at when I'm suspicious about a 4-0, 5-1 team that, doesn't have Aaron Rodgers going lights out, et cetera, is I want to look at their fumbles, because the total amount of fumbles isn't random. Chase Young's going to get you more strip sacks than the next guy. It's the recoveries that are random, because he's going to strip sack Dak and Dak's going to fall on it, or he's going to strip sack Dak and Payne or somebody is going to fall on it. That's the random part. You have to watch for that, because that's going to sometimes tell you a lie one way or the other about the team.
Right, right. When analyzing offensive line play, have you seen indications of differences in the positional value of the different positions along the offensive line? And is there any truth to the belief that centers are more important for run blocking and tackles are more important for pass blocking, or that left tackles are more important than right tackles?
Left tackle's a little more important than the right tackle. It gets really overstated. The tackles are important for pass protection, and that's true. Most of what we're doing analytically, with the recognition that the center has a specific special job, the interior line is the interior line, and it's almost like you have to put them together as one box of people, with the acknowledgement, Washington has a very strong center and one very strong guard that we all know about. And then so that means a strong interior line. And then it's like, well, you assume the other position is going to be taken up. You guys have questions at the tackle positions. I know there's some good solutions there that you've got, but those are things that are potential question marks in pass protection. And the thing about all of it is the defense will find the weak link. And this is what Aaron Schatz says all the time, our president, is, the weakest link of the offensive line is the problem, no matter what positions it's at. Because you can move Aaron Donald anywhere you want and line him up over anyone you want. And so if that right tackle isn't the guy, the pass edge rusher is going to be there. And the blitz is going to come from that side. And if you're weak up the middle, they're going to shuffle the do NASCAR package and they'll put the defensive end on the inside. So that's the thing, the biggest takeaway is the weakest link of the offensive line is the weakness of the offensive line, no matter where it is. And other than that, yeah, some of the conventional wisdom there is conventional. You want a good left tackle. You had one there for many years. Now you brought somebody in Leno that is potentially a replacement.
Right. If you're building a defense, what do the stats say about which positions you should prioritize and which you should devote fewer resources to?
This is such a topic, especially in the analytics world. And I'll tell you, when you look at the stats one way, they say put it all in the secondary. They say, the other way, put it all on the pass rushers and the defensive line. Older school people, and I've talked to NFL people who do analytics, and they lean on the side of the pass rushers. And it really is a matter, it's almost potato, because, well, that interception, did the pass rusher cause it, et cetera? And like teasing that out, like statistically, we're still like kind of, making stone tools and axes with that type of thing. I'll say this. If you dig deep into it, I think it does look like the secondary is the place to put your resources in, except that your cornerbacks have way up and down kind of play, and your edge rushers tend to be pretty consistent from year to year. Washington, for an example, Josh Norman. You guys brought in a couple of years ago who looked like all-pro Revis level player and was very fluctuating and was very dependent on the scheme and things, and had some really bad games and some good games. The edge rusher, Chase Young is either going to get the sacks or get triple teamed, and then somebody else gets the sacks, and Sweat gets the sacks or whatever. So while it might be like the secondary guy is more important, more valuable, it's more trustworthy, money, draft picks, et cetera, to put him into the edge rushers, try to kill the quarterback, and then the cornerbacks will be okay. They only got to cover for a second,
Right. Makes sense. So switching gears to the Washington football team specifically, they're projected to have 8.1 wins this year, which will be a losing record with the expanded season. How much variance does that projection have, and what are the most important factors for the team in determining it?
There's a lot of variance this year, particularly for Washington. More variance than I would expect for a defense-oriented team, because a lot of times with defensive teams, they're projecting the final score is going to be 20-17, which means
if it's lower scoring games, then any score changes the outcome a lot more.
Right. Now your chances of being what we call Super Bowl contenders, 12 plus wins, 11% chance. 11% chance of a 12 plus win season. That's better than the Giants Eagles. Your chances of 0 to 5 wins are 18%. So that's kind of bad. That's kind of worrisome. One source of volatility is your quarterback.
Right.
He's a volatile quarterback. He's a new quarterback, and he's a legendarily volatile quarterback. And another one is the division itself. There are divisions where, the chances of the Broncos overcoming the Chiefs are not high.
Right.
Who's at the top of the division. And like the AFC North, the Bengals are at the bottom of the division, and everybody's in this place.
Right.
We're pretty certain the Cowboys are going to win the division, but there's question marks there. And we kind of think the Giants and Eagles, they could be all over creation. And so could Washington. So that creates this, when we do our simulations, there's these places where a 9-7 team wins the division, or a 10-7, whatever it is, 9-8 wins the division. And you have to account for all of that.
Right. So in general, what do you feel very confident in forecasting for Washington's upcoming season? And what would you be very hesitant to predict based on the unknowns?
Defense. Really feel confident like that. I know we said a couple of minutes ago, defense, it's volatile, changes from year to year. Not a lot of evidence that there's going to be a big change in that. I believe we have them ranked 7th overall.
Okay. And they were 3rd last year, right?
Huh?
They were 3rd last year.
Yeah, and that's an example. Like, we have a decline to 7th. So we have a modest decline. Sometimes when you're doing statistics, it's just like the rule central tendency says teams that are great fall back, teams that are bad pop up.
And sometimes it's just because other teams just got a lot better. So
right. You didn't have the resources to make those improvements because you devoted your resources on your offense, etc.
Right.
I hesitate to make lots of predictions about the passing game because we've spent the last 13 years wondering which Ryan Fitzmagic shows up week to week. Factor in that we don't really know what this offense for real looks like, because last year it looked like an emergency situation.
Right.
It's different. I think our projection is like 28th. It's like real low for offense. But if you told me it's like, no, veteran quarterback distributing the ball to these weapons takes them up to 15th, I'm like, yeah, I can definitely see that. That's a definite possibility.
Okay. And in general, what does your analysis say about Washington's quarterback situation and who should be our starting quarterback this year?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things like, well, you should have found Tom Brady, it's that kind of thing. Like, the logic is saying you're bringing the veteran in. We know he is volatile, okay? But and we don't have a lot of information on Tyler Heineke. I mean, there's nothing there to suggest this guy should be it. We all watched the playoff game. He kind of looked okay. Fitz is probably going to have a 3 or 4 interception game somewhere along the way. And then you look at that when it comes. Can Washington's defense overcome like a bad game by their quarterback? They can, okay? Can they overcome this absolutely miserable game that sometimes Fitz has? You can't necessarily, I don't know, maybe the Steelers could do that with their defense. You can't necessarily do that. So the logic is saying Fitz, when we do our DVOA and DER on quarterbacks, he comes out as like a slightly below average starter over the last 10 years, which is what you would think, okay? And it's like the old joke about the guy who's got his hand in the oven and his hand in the ice cubes. Average. He's on average, his temperature is fine, right? And that's who Fitz is. So reasonably, you would say this was a team that say, oh, we didn't get this rookie, we didn't get that rookie, we're not getting Aaron Rodgers. Go get a competent veteran. That's what they did. It makes sense. I think the big difference with Fitz is most of the time the competent veteran, you're expecting a guy who's going to just take what the defense gives you and try to win 19-17. You don't get that. That's what makes it volatile and interesting for Washington.
Right. He's like the opposite of Alex Smith.
Yes. The anti-Alex Smith. Yeah.
Right. Do any of Washington's skill position players, Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, stand out as guys that you expect to take a big step forward or back this year? And do the stats reveal anything unexpected or especially notable about them?
Samuel, he came up really, really high in his catch percentage and really low in the expected yards after catch. Now, I think if you look at the regular yards after catch, he's got a lot of them, but we'll do a thing where it's like, oh, it was a 2-yard pass to the outside. He should have had 10 yak, but he only had 9 yak or whatever. So he came out really low for that, which is weird because have you seen him? Have you watched him? He looks like he's breaking a million tackles. And, when you dig into it, it's like, well, they were using him at running back for a while in Carolina. So that could be a fluke thing there, et cetera. But there is a little bit of a surprise there that this guy doesn't come out like a yak machine there. Everything, including the eyeball test, down to catch rates and things. Like McLaurin's been held back. He's been held back by Haskins. He's been held back by Alex Smith, by that offense. And, every indicator says he can be a much better player along the way. And for some of the others, it's like Gibson, I think he came out like around average in yak, but you saw this is what he's expected to do. Now, how can you make Gibson, and I think you had a question coming up, how do you make Gibson better at yak? Make a defender go more than 3 yards down the field.
Right.
And he'll be able to run 3 more yards. And again, like for all these guys, they pass the eyeball test. I don't know if you've interviewed them, but most of them pass the interview test. Like, I want to hire these guys to run my bank or something like that. These are great individuals, Logan Thomas included.
Right.
So now we need to see them in an offense that's a little more functional.
Right. What did your analysis reveal about Washington's offensive scheme last year? And is there anything schematically that you think they should do differently?
Throw the ball more than 2 yards downfield.
Right.
Like the what you call air yards or yards to target. I think we call them air yards. Lowest in the league, shockingly low. Then you go to the film and you try to make sense of what they're doing. And everybody watch Washington games. You guys, I've never seen so many lateral passes in my life. Like when I would play the college football EA Sports game and I was like a new team playing Alabama, all I could do was throw the screen in the shallow. That was Washington last year for much of the year. So schematically, they have to push the ball downfield, and they would have to with any quarterback. And the problem is that's obvious. I think everybody knows it, but it's legit. Once you start doing that more, then you see more of what you have from Gibson, more what you have from McLaurin, more of what you have from some of these other guys.
Right. And I imagine they clearly want to do that. I think, they completely revamped their wide receiver core, so it shows they want to go downfield. Yeah. And what did your analysis reveal about Washington's defensive scheme last year? And is there anything schematically they should change there?
I don't know schematically so much, in terms of one thing that was interesting, they use 5 defensive linemen a lot. Nobody uses 5 defensive linemen anymore. That's like 1950s college football. You look at the defensive linemen they were using, like, yep, let's get those guys on the field. Let's get all of them at the same time. And I don't necessarily feel like that's something that should change because some of them it's a defensive lineman, it's an edge rusher who is like an unbelievably great athlete who can drop into coverage and play the run, etc.
Right.
And you might have a question coming up. The closest thing to a weakness is the linebacker core is not phenomenal.
Right.
You're going to be weak somewhere, be weak at the linebacker core. The young man who drafted Davis, I saw him sort of just a runaround guy. I didn't like, oh my God, this is the guy you have to have there. This is a team but you're so strong in the secondary.
Right.
That you can run nickel almost 100% of the time. You can run 6 defensive backs. You can put your Landon Collins type guys in as like a will linebacker type of thing.
Right.
And you have the option of doing like a 5 lineman thing if it's like, oh, well, we're facing a run heavy team or it's a run heavy situation, et cetera. Those are such good strengths and unique strengths. Go with those and then, worry about linebacker as it comes up. When you have to cover a running back into the flat, worry about your linebacker situation.
Right. And what do you think are the weak links, if any, in the defense, and how do you think it'll perform this year? I guess we kind of talked about that already. Switching gears to what stands out about Washington's special teams performance last season, and do you have any special teams predictions for the upcoming year?
We have a high special teams prediction. It's hard to predict special teams. Usually you predict the Ravens will have great special teams because they have a phenomenal kicker, and also because their front office seems to have 6 million extra guys hanging around on the bench that are phenomenal. Your punter's great, Way is great.
Right.
Now, Hopkins had a rough year with field goals last year. If I'm remembering this correctly. He's an outstanding kickoff guy.
Right.
Okay. And from year to year, if he's a good kickoff guy, sometimes the field goals go up and down, and then they just bounce back. It's not he lost his leg. He can 7-yard kickoff. It's just that it was windy that day or he missed one. So we have, good kicker, good punter. And of course that dovetails, the strengths dovetail, right? Because your punter is going to drive the length of the field. That's going to help your defense. Your kickoff man is making them start and make them drive 80, 75 yards each time. That plays into your defense. So there's good synergy there. And of course, again, if Hopkins bounces back and you're stuck settling for field goals, you're going to make more of them. So it's 7th overall. It's strong. Your return game has issues. Right? I know there was fumbles and things like that. You can find a return man. You can't always find a kicker. You can't always find a punter. There's going to be a 6th-round pick.
Right.
I know you brought in Humphreys, I think, in there, or it's going to be you'll have a return man and you'll be fine.
Right. So switching gears to the division, the Almanac mentioned several ways in which Mike McCarthy's coaching issues from the Green Bay seem to have carried over to his Cowboys team. Can you expound on those issues?
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, Aaron Rodgers is in the news a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard. Okay. Rodgers would complain about McCarthy a lot, and I'm going to call him my good friend Ty. If you're out there, my good friend Ty Dunn. A couple of years ago, wrote an expose about the Packers, and it had Mike McCarthy was going to get massages in the middle of the day. The team was out there practicing, or the assistants were holding meetings. He was, he getting a rub down. Maybe not the hardest working guy in the coaching fraternity.
Right.
So takes over the Cowboys, and if you remember, he said he watched every film of every game, and then he joked at his press conference, "I didn't really watch film of every game." Gets in there. It's COVID. There's no regular mini camps. It's Zoom meetings. You watch that Cowboys team. They look like. You ever done the thing where you go to the Zoom meeting, but you have your camera off and your microphone on mute?
Yeah.
You're playing Minecraft, or you're messing with your phone, or you're watching TV. The Cowboys look like that. The Cowboys in the first of the season look like that. And you don't want to put 2 and 2 together and the personality of McCarthy or an accusation. When a coach has a reputation for not always being dialed in, and then the team looks functionally unprepared to do their jobs, that's what we saw from the Cowboys last year. Now, I will say, he's obviously on notice. He changes coordinators. His assistants are on notice. It's a normal camp. People are going to be out there running, hitting sleds and everything like that. I think we're not going to see that problem this year from the Cowboys.
Right. Okay. Right. And what does your analysis show about the Giants quarterback, Daniel Jones? And do you think he'll be the long-term answer in New York?
I don't think he's a long-term answer, but it's interesting analytically because, our projections on short passes, he is not efficient. On medium passes, he's not efficient. And we bake in the fact that they dropped a lot of passes when the receivers weren't great. And so these are bad indicators. And then his deep passing rate is amazing. It's wonderful. And then if you watch him, I think you guys had Colt McCoy the one time Washington played him. But
right.
This kid's a joke. This kid's a mess. This kid's a disaster. And then a beautiful 65-yard bomb to Slate. And it's like, what just happened?
Right.
Well, there is an indicator for him pointing up, in addition to the fact they got new receivers, in addition to the fact that they invested 6 million draft picks on the offensive line the last 3 years. So the indicators are wavering up and down. It's so rare to take the year 3, the Josh Allen trademark year 3 leap. It's the reason why we mention Josh Allen every time is because it's so rare. Ain't nobody else that does it. Factor that in with all these indicators. He's not the long-term answer. He's probably just going to be a kind of okay quarterback there. And the Giants look like they might be a kind of okay team that after years of building is just at this point where it's like, we can compete.
Right. Right. And so can Football Outsiders offer any insight into what happened to Carson Wentz last year and his precipitous decline?
A team of psychologists and guidance counselors would be needed to explain this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what happened to Carson Wentz transcends anything in human consciousness. The stats say no quarterback has gone from pretty good for 2 years before that to rock bottom, terrible, Jamarcus Russell-y, just
right.
it has never happened. Guys go from great to bad, or guys go from already bad to they fall off the table, et cetera. Peyton Manning at age 40 does something, whatever. This is unprecedented.
Mm.
So you put it into the data, and the data says, well, average the last couple of years, and what you get is a pretty mediocre quarterback who can kind of start and be like the 30th best guy in the NFL.
Right.
That's kind of the option for Wentz this year.
Right.
And that's what else we can do, because again, it's terra incognita. It's a totally different thing.
Right.
Using Indianapolis' problem, I mean, for Washington fans looking at the Philly, you see a rebuilding team that has like a lot of questions. That's what Philly is right now.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So where can people buy the 2021 Almanac, and what other information can they access on Football Outsiders?
Well, come to Football Outsiders. You can buy the Almanac there. You can also get an FO Plus subscription. It is $1 a week right now. $1 per week. Okay, that's cheaper than anything. You get access to all of our stats, the database, Scott Spratt's fantasy predictions and projections that are constantly being updated, all kinds of stuff there. That's at footballoutsiders.com. And of course, once you subscribe, you get the Almanac. You get the online version of the Almanac, which is very easy to use. You can also go to Amazon, buy the Football Outsiders Almanac 2021, Amazon.com. Get a print copy. I've got my print copy here. It's something you kind of want in print because you want it when you're watching a preseason game to be able to flip and say, "Who's that kid?" And we've got write-ups for everybody in there. So footballoutsiders.com to get your subscription, or the Almanac, Amazon.com to get a print edition.
Okay, and you also update the Almanac, right?
Yeah, so you get online, and you'll the fantasy stuff gets updated constantly, and we will do some corrections and updates on the online version of it. Obviously, we don't come to your house and scribble into that.
Yeah, if you get the print copy. Yeah.
Information, and of course, during the season, there is so much that we have. Help for wagers, help for fantasy people, help for people who just want to like laugh at the team that stinks that year, whether it's the Giants, whether it's the Eagles, whether it's Washington. Find out why they stink, find out why the other team is great.
Right, right. All right. Thanks so much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thanks. You too. Bye.